The James Webb Space Telescope wasn't supposed to be one of the most expensive scientific projects in history. The estimated price in 2000 was just $1 billion. But the complexity of the telescope caught NASA by surprise. It got so expensive, Congress nearly scrapped the project. By the time the telescope launched at the end of 2021, the cost was more than $10 billion. So why did NASA spend so much public money on the project, and why has it taken so long? On December 25th, 2021, the James Webb blasted into deep space orbit. The destination, a point in space called Lagrange Point 2, 1 million miles from Earth. That's further than any astronaut has traveled, and it's also the perfect spot to investigate the birth of the universe. Light from the first stars began to travel outwards soon after the Big Bang, and that light cooled from visible light to infrared light over billions of years. That's why the James Webb was designed to collect light in the infrared spectrum. The Webb is massive, so it was folded up in order to fit atop the Ariane 5 rocket before launch, and then unfolded in space after it's separated. NASA's scientists dubbed the million-mile trip 30 Days of Terror, because everything had to go right with no less than 344 possible points of failure. One tiny flaw, and the Webb could have ended up a piece of space junk. The mission was a success, but 20 years ago, no one ever imagined it would take so long or cost so much to get it to the launch pad. Part of the struggle has been a need for perfection. NASA couldn't afford to repeat the mistakes made on the Webb's predecessor, the Hubble telescope. After its launch in 1990, the first images came back blurry, so astronauts had to fix Hubble's mirror while it was in space. NASA had already spent $2 billion on Hubble at that point. The repair cost $86 million versus just $2 million had NASA caught it while the Hubble was still on Earth. That taught NASA an expensive lesson. So with Webb, they had to get everything right the first time. In 2000, the budget was $1 billion. But by 2005, the budget quadrupled to $4.5 billion. By 2010, the year it was supposed to launch, none of the main instruments or mirrors were delivered to NASA. The estimated budget in 2010 was already up to $6.5 billion. Members of Congress even considered scrapping the project.
Some have argued that we should cut our losses and move on. Others have suggested that we're rewarding bad behavior by continuing to invest in the mission.
Instead, in 2011, Congress decided to cap the budget at $8 billion and tapped Christina Chaplin to audit the project every year. But nothing could really stop prices from rising, because nearly every part of the telescope had to be invented along the way. Though it's often compared to Hubble, the James Webb has a mirror 6 times the size of its predecessor and requires far more advanced technology and specialized conditions to operate. It's bigger and needs some of the coldest temperatures in the known universe. And the Webb needs extreme cold for its infrared cameras to operate, negative 388 degrees Fahrenheit cold, to be precise. To protect these sensitive instruments from the heat of the sun, NASA built a 5-layer tennis court-sized sun shield. Think of the most advanced and complicated beach umbrella you can imagine. It can withstand extreme temperature swings and even small meteoroids that might pierce the thin membrane. But even that isn't cold enough for one of the cameras, which needs something called a cryocooler to bring the temperature down to negative 447 degrees. NASA spent more than a decade and $150 million developing the cooler. It was only supposed to cost $22 million. In 2018, Congress had to raise the spending limit set in 2011. By the time the telescope was ready for launch in 2021, it had already cost $8.8 billion, making it one of the most expensive scientific projects in history. But there was one more challenge: transporting it from California to a European spaceport in French Guiana in South America. Details had to be kept secret because the valuable cargo would make a lucrative target for pirates. It traveled 16 days from California through the Panama Canal to the launch site. The European Space Agency paid for and oversaw the launch, as well as building 2 of Webb's instruments. Together, the European and Canadian space agencies contributed another $1 billion beyond NASA's $8.8 billion. And that brings us close to our $10 billion total. But all of this just gets us to the moment when the James Webb begins to do science. Some hope to learn more about the origins of the universe, while others, like Heidi Hammel, expect to point it at our own solar system to learn more about some of Earth's closest neighbors. James Webb has some big footsteps to follow.